which is Bachama. But Elisha in the middle is the one who has done most trips to the community. Here is a session in Lagos where we recorded some interviews and recorded data, speech, and here is the dictionary workshop we did in Lagos discussing orthography development. So what type of data have been archived? Well, we have a lexical database from Toolbox, and then of course natural speech, quite a lot, and also of course metadata, which is data about the data. So this is my Toolbox file I'm just showing, and hopefully soon we will be able to publish a dictionary. This is how the ELO files look like. When you have a text, you have a video, you have an audio, then you transcribe it, and you will be able to annotate it, time-aligned, so that you can also make it a searchable corpus. So imagine if you have 18 hours, then you have different files, and you can be able to search either in English or in the language for different terms, and it will generate. It's very useful for all kinds of analysis. So the different text types that is included is expository, where you have folk tales, also songs, and also cultural events. And here are the different genres that are included, just to mention some. We have folk tales, we have social linguistic reflections, where they speak about how they view the language, and also example of burials. So I wanted to play for you one of the folk tales, just how it looks like. And let's see if their sound. Is this auxiliary on? Just so this was text collected. It was close to 1 hour where this lady only was telling folk tales, and I was not the one who collected it. It was my research assistant who went to the village. And then when we came back, we then started analyzing it. So here is another one. Let's see. Alright, so I'm just showing you some videos that we've been able to collect. It is because of when you start a documentation, you want to collect as much as possible, and because I didn't have any specific research topic, whether it was pottery or folk tales per se, I just wanted as much as possible. It also has its weakness, of course, and sometimes you get videos like this, which are not very clear in terms of speech. This video was very hard to transcribe, but still you get a view of the environment, you get a view of how they do their fishing. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but just to show you. And this is the mama who sings. So basically, what are the outcomes from all this? Yes, we have video recordings available. We have a lexical database and a grammatical sketch, and of course, the first attempt to an orthography, which is being tested. And But also other outcomes is the training of community members. When you are working with community members, you're able to involve them in the project, and you also increase their ownership in the project. That is not only from outside, but somebody from within that is leading the project. Of course, for future outcomes, it would be lovely to have a dictionary published and a dictionary app, maybe, and other things for future. But results that we've been able to get into political, the religious leadership is also the political leadership. So, and it's a system that is dying out, that has not been in place since 1987. The last religious leader died and has not been replaced since, and then there has been a chieftaincy issue. So these names of, and also the worship of these gods is dying out. And also in terms of traditional festivals, they have quite many different fishing festivals, where they will, each river or each village has their own river where they have their festival, and yearly. So all these activities are basically dying out because of the lack of the religious leader that is not there now to impose these traditions. And also, of course, when you have urbanization, people leaving the village, and others that come in to disturb the traditional order, so to say. Well, some of the challenges that we face is, of course, when you start documenting an undescribed or underdescribed language, what do you start with? What do you document when there's no data available? And of course, this you cannot decide on your own. You decide it in collaboration with the people that you work with. But a weakness with my data is that I have a lot of everything and nothing in real detail. No deep focus on folktales, no deep focus on anything. So that would be a purpose for a future continuation of a project, would be to focus on one area or two areas to really be able to cover it in detail and make it rich. And when I say rich, making it not just one video about the subject, but really covering the whole process, if it's pottery making or blacksmithing and so on. And yes, of course you can end up with files that have low quality. When you're not there as a researcher, of course we can also make mistakes, but when you are sending somebody to do it for you, there is an increased chance that anything can go wrong. But most of the times I've been surprised at the level of quality they have provided, and it has made it possible for me to even do this project. Without them, I would have had no data. And of course, you have the financial limitations. So, conclusion, we had very little data before on this language, but now we have a large corpus and a grammar sketch. And in order to continue this documentation more effectively, one would want to focus on a specific domain, or work in a team with other linguists, or work in teams with other researchers from other domains, such as involving people that are focused on zoology or biology to cover other areas that you are not an expert in. Names of plants or trees or fishes, all those types. But if I can do this, then anyone can do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Another round of applause. We'll take questions, comments, comments. Yes.
Thank you, Miriam, for your work and your paper. I just wondering, is there no point in time that you felt dissatisfied or had some reservations about the fact that you did not really go to this community, having has to do with going to this community and to get whatever you need to. So in your own case, you didn't go there because of some situation that you about. So would you say that you are very okay with this work? And to be honest, what I mean, are you very okay with your work, or you feel you ought to have done it on your own? Thank you.
Take all the questions and then she'll respond. Please permit me to sit down. There were many things on mind. So, William, I would like to ask a question regarding the name. Are there alternative names? Are those names? What's the name?
Koba is the name of their own that they call their language, and Kwa is the name of the village. But that has become the name that outsiders refer thereto.
It would be nice to know the relationship between the two names, but that is what gives us the large number of languages we have listed for Nigeria. Because the 2 or 3 different things will refer to the same people. So, the next question is perhaps related to the question Dr. Udo asked. Now, if you are working from Lagos, so where are you getting the data from, the pictures, the video? How do you get them? Just like the thank you. Any other?
Thank you. That's actually, I can relate to my class. We need to focusing on the particular aspect of the language when you are documenting the whole of this, like you showed us, or you focus on this sketch grammar or vocabulary or anything.
Well, thank you very much for the I have 2 questions. The first one is how do you intend to do archiving in dealing with the ISO number of the language? How do you intend to put it out there for people to see? And then going to the second question, do you intend to do some phonological analysis of this language? If you do, how do you think to cope with the recording distortions?
I wish to say thank you to Miriam. The work is interesting, but I'm worried on the area of adjustment, both the first and the second person stage. You've not visited the language area, and the assistants are residing in Lagos. They are not residing in the language area. So when it comes to actual writing, how do you get the alphabet, the correct spelling form? How do you get, I know you are not working on a dialect, you are working on a language. How do you get the real writing form without distortion? That is one. The cultural items, because with the experience in Akwa, I am an Anana speaker residing in Lagos. And if you want to get data from me, Anana, maybe within my parents are from me. And that is what they teach me. What I give you will be completely wrong. I'll give you data from you. So what do you intend to do with such a problem?
Thank you for all this.
All right. Inspector, what are the outcomes? Speech grammar, post and grammar. Please will explain that first.
Thank you very much for that testing documentation. Some of the issues have been taken already. So the other thing I'd like to point out is that, I mean, this is there's a paper I'm working on, changing sphere between language documentation, because this is just one aspect of it. Remote, kind of documentation where, for security reasons, you can't go to Adamawa itself. And so you use language consultants residing in Lagos where you can visit. But the thing I noticed about your consultants was that they're all nerds. So I was wondering, whether there would be any kind of bias, given that you're just making use of just the male folk in that community. I observed that they have collected documentations on women activities, fishing activities, and so on, but it would be it would give it a more robust outlook if you had another gender or young people serving as consultants. And then one more thing. I know that Roger Blench has done some work on these languages, but I didn't hear you talk about that, and I didn't see it in the reference list. Are you aware of this work? Thank you so much.
Okay, there we go, sorry. Thank you all for your very interesting questions. So just to quickly go to the first one, Dr. If I'm satisfied, I don't think we can all ever be fully satisfied. But when you start on something, you don't expect it to be perfect. You learn, you fail, and you learn. So there are so many things, if I would have gone there, I would have done differently. But also, there are things that I could not maybe have recorded because as an outsider, I would have been looked at with, there are some activities, being a female, I would not have been involved in. So there's pros and cons, definitely. So that's the answer I can give. For the name, just to explain that Ba is the name that I choose because it's not referring to the village. But there are two villages, Gwa and Yakan, the main villages, and you have other settlements, smaller villages in the area around it. So, but they all understand each other. It's mutually intelligible. So the only difference is maybe phonology, like some prefixes are using, in Kwa you say D as a plural prefix, and in the other you use Ri. And there's a morphological process behind all that. But that's the answer. So Kwa is the name that others around that area use to refer to the language. I hope that was okay, Professor. And for the focus, if I would want to focus on anything, there are so many areas that one would like to focus on. Folk tales is one. It's very rich and they are dying out. They are dying out because some of the elders that I recorded are already gone. And they tell stories that are losing, as in the young generation do not know them. The young generation can only say part of it. So it's an urgency. So this is the benefit of at least having a video recording of this person, even if I have not analyzed the folk tale. Here we have the raw data, and in the future we can now start, at least we have a transcription of it, and we have a first free translation of the text. It is something to begin with. So for archiving, how I plan to make it available, I think it was you who asked how we plan. So this archive that is online is free and it's open. All you have to do is to sign in, and I recommend everyone who's working on Nigerian language to have an account with the ERDP. So you can look how others have documented languages in Nigeria already and get inspiration, actually. But for community members, they are not very much online, so to say. So to make it available for them, one way is that I've uploaded some videos on YouTube and also distributed CDs, DVDs with their data on. But it's absolutely an issue on how to make it available for them when they are in a village. They might not have mobile phones, and you still want to give them an opportunity to appreciate what they have done. So for the phonology, so the way I did this project is that I had different people, consultants in Lagos. So when I got the data, we now did a slow re-speech of the text, and then when it came to maybe phonology or to look for distribution of phonemes, we would now get certain sets elicitation basically. So I have, I think, more than 100 hours of elicited data to get all the verbal paradigms, noun paradigms. But that's a different set that I wish to upload to this archive because it's data that is highly interested. But mainly that's how I worked. So I get the raw data, and from there I now build my questionnaire, how to get the full paradigms, and also building my lexical database. I hope that's an answer to your question. Because this raw data is not enough to even hear, or you record it in a quiet environment. That's elicitation sessions that I've worked on. The other one was on how do we decide when we are dealing with residents in Lagos. The speakers that I had, some of them are even, one of them was residing in Yoruba actually. So they are highly involved in the language, they speak the language daily, though they reside in Lagos. They have a living community in Lagos, but also they, of course, they also learn when they are doing this project. That's a positive side. But I know that they speak Ba. They are recognized by elders of their community. So they are not just anyone I met on the streets. They are people that are considered, and when they don't know, they also call people from the village. So there is a community effort, but they are my main assistant researchers. And so the one who is not a Ba speaker is, of course, the Bachama speaker. I think he speaks Ba, but he's not been used in elicitation or translation, nothing. He's only been helping me to collect the raw video recordings. Then to move on, that was also to address the cultural aspects. When you get data that you don't always understand. That's the truth. So it only gives you a basis, a foundation for which you should continue research. And the goal would, of course, be to go to the village and be able to ask questions myself. And it is always easier when you are in the village, in the community. So in terms of the orthography, what I mentioned, the first orthography, that means that is the dictionary that we want to publish. That's the first version of the orthography that has been published material, and that's why I used not only these people, but we did a dictionary workshop, meaning gathering people that are residing in Lagos, but they also are involved in asking, of course, when we have different issues, whether to spell a certain way or not. But the way we try to do it is to look at the data we have. So I can say that our orthography for now is more of the Yakan orthography than the Kwa orthography. That's the reality. So, but we work with what we have. So, last two questions was from Professor Lee. Yes. So, working with main consultants, I did have one woman in Lagos that helped me with the elicitation. And then, of course, participants that gave me texts. But that's a weakness that I was not able to find a female research assistant. I think for many reasons, we may kind of, we saw that the men had taken over the project and kind of pushed away. But if I would go there by myself, that would be one of the things I would do. Thank you. The last one about Roger Blanche. I personally know Roger Blanche and know what he has done. He has never worked much on that. So, but he has worked on Alabama, and so it's more like what he makes available, if it's anything that is new. But I think he's waiting for me to give him data. So
Just important to know that he's also in that area. So let's encourage Miriam. Thank you very much. The next paper, Arokoye and Olarawaju. Are you the Olarawaju friend? So again, you have 20 minutes for presentation, 10 to discuss the paper.
Program. My name is Olarawaju Samuel from University of Ibadan. I'm representing the presenters of this project. This is an ongoing work. It's comprised of 5 dialects of a language. So we're trying to design a unified orthography for the dialect. So the topic says towards designing an orthography for open dialects. Those are the dialects. So I hope you will see this. I'm so sorry. I supposed to print this out, but I got here late and some other challenges. I'm so sorry about that. All right. So the introduction says orthography system is a language of a language is an official codification of that language. So that's the. I will just go to the basics of defining. You could just change. So we are trying to provide a unified orthography for these dialects. That's just the word. So I will go to the fundamentals. I talked about the orthography. I talked about graphs and then alphabet. So I used the definition from Murphy, who says a graph is a minimal unit of writing by which itself represents some part of a language. The definition of orthography says an orthography is the writing system of a language consisting of a set of graphs and conventions regarding the relation of those graphs alone. Then it defines alphabets as a set of graphs that represent sounds, though not necessarily the same sounds in every language that it serves. So those are just the background of the terms in this work. As I said earlier, this is a work in progress because we started the work around 2007, so to say, but we noticed that it's actually bigger than what we thought it is. This is the confusion. The Ogun dialects comprise of the Yoruba-speaking communities in Kogi State. So Kogi State has lots of languages, but the Ogun dialects or the Ogun people are just the Yoruba part of the state. Now, according to Arokoye 2007, there are 5 dialects of Ogun, and they are Yagba, Oworo, Owe, Bunu, and Ijumu. Now, these dialects are spoken in a large number of local governments of the states. So it is important to know that Okun is a cover time for a group of people. It is not a language. That was one of the reasons, or that was the thing that actually deceived us in the inception of at the onset of the research. Okun is not a language. Okun is just a group of people, and the word Okun actually means well done, and it is a greeting system. And then, so Okun in itself, it's just the name of the people. These are the dialects. So it is a cover term for them. I mean the Okun, and then they accept, or they call themselves the Okun people. Now these dialects are mutually intelligible. So when you speak yours, I understand. When another person speaks theirs, we understand. Well, that's it. The research goal, the primary aim of this research is to design a unified orthography for the Okun dialects. You might ask, why do we have to design orthography for a dialect that is not a language in that sense? The point is, there are literary works that are going on for those dialects, but unfortunately, we don't have a writing system for it. Unfortunately, we don't have a writing system for it. Soon enough, I'm sure a Bible is coming up, and I was part of the editing team for that Bible. And one of the issues we have was that we didn't have a unified writing system, so we couldn't have a way to document the Bible, and the Bible is still hanging till now. So part of the issues for this work. With the writing system, it helps to standardize the dialects for both formal and informal usage. When we have an orthography system, anyone can just document the language and produce literary text in those dialects. Yeah, so that's it. At the theoretical background, well, I've not seen a theory that is used to explain orthography. My own understanding is that orthographic study is just one of the fundamentals of languages. And to describe a language is to give, one of the things to do is to give it a orthographic system, that is the writing system. There have been issues about applying theories to African languages and then leaving the descriptive aspect of it. The point is, nobody can apply a theory to what has not been described. I mean, a theory is meant to be applied to something you have on ground, and not just to bring out the description of the language. So I believe that with more works in years to come about all the languages in Nigeria beyond Okun dialects, if you can have a perfect description of those languages, we can see where and how we could incorporate theories when they are needed, and not just to keep on importing theories for these dialects. I am aware that there are works on Okun dialects which have used optimality theory, segmental theory, and it's so sad that the works are, don't let me say less standardized, but the works are not really giving it what the dialect require. I mean, it's not describing the language. It's just telling us a constant is this and that, and that is all about that. So that's the reason. Now to the Okun consonants. I'm sorry, there is a mix-up somehow. That's okay. The Okun consonant in the consonantal system of the dialect, we have. So I changed the theme I used. So I can't see the picture again, but there should be a picture here. So there are interesting consonants in these dialects, and the dialects. Yes. You could just leave it. Just leave it. All right. So we all know what consonants are now. The graphs, we have issues with the velar fricative. We have issues with the nasal, the palatal nasal. We have issues with the velar nasal. And then what are the issues? We decided, or we are deciding to use diagraph to represent those the velar fricative, the palatal nasal, and the velar nasal. But now, the one of the issues we are facing now is if we give it an orthography. All right, there you go. Sorry, I screenshotted that and manipulated my way around it, but then because I changed the theme now, we are seeing the whole system. Sorry about that. All right, there are 20 consonants in open dialect. There are 20 consonants in open dialect, and the consonants are not common to one another. While one has, look at the first bilabial fricative, the voiced bilabial fricative is only found in a dialect, in one of the dialects, and it is Oworo. And the alveolar plosive is general, the velar plosive is general, the labivelar plosive, is general too. There is a bar there, there's an omission in this work. A voiced bilabial plosive is there, it's common too. Let me just go to where we have issues. Look at the voiceless velar fricative, and the nasals, the palatal nasal and the velar nasal. So what we represented the palatal nasal with the normal conventions we have in other neighboring African languages, with in anavelar nasal and the ja. Then the velar nasal is represented with digraph too. The alveolar nasal and the velar voiced plosive, the velar voiced plosive, or voiced velar plosive, So we did that just to single them out from other type of nasals we have. And then another issue with the nasals is because there are instances where the bilabial nasal is opaque to assimilation. Let me give you an example. If you want to say, if you want to call someone by name, say Abajemto, Abajembe, and Abajem Kodas. God made it for me. God made me to live, and God made it for us. Now, the bilabial nasal is opaque to assimilation, in that it will not assimilate to the surrounding sounds. So now we have a question there which we not even answer, that okay, if there are instances where the bilabial nasals maintain its form, could it be that the underlying form is actually the bilabial nasal or the alveolar nasal? So that's the question we are still working on. All right. Okay, some examples from the dialect. I explained already that those ones are common. If you look at APR, could you just okay. The second set of data there, where there is dash, where you have matches. That word there is APR, and APR is found only just to tell you that we have the voiceless bilabial plosive just in a single dialect and not in other dialects. So I explained the sounds already. Okay, so the issue of it is that some consonants are optional. Okay, Yagba test 20 consonants without the bilabial plosive and the palato-alveolar fricative. Oworo, Bono, and Ijumo test 19 consonants as seen here, the bilabial plosive, the palato-alveolar fricative, and the velar nasal. Then in Oworo to attest the highest number of consonants with the bilabial plosive and the palato-alveolar fricative present, and the velar nasal is absent. In the graphical representation, we used sounds such as the velar plosive, voiceless velar plosive, and the voiced velar plosive. and then the vela nasals are given the B, and the R in the dialect. And those are just the representation. Then I talked about the palatal nasal, then the velar nasal too, which we used a combination of an alveolar nasal plus the Y, letter Y, I mean, then the alveolar nasal plus the letter G, I mean, in the orthographic sense. All right. So the sound sh, it's common in the language, but then we had an adulterated form of it while we were working on that Bible, in which people are using this diagram to represent the sound, but we adopted the one with a dot, the S with a dot, to show the palato-alveolar fricative. Right now, the vowel graphs. Vowels are produced with little or no occlusions in the oral cavity. There are 5. Okay, we have oral nasals and we have oral vowels and the nasal vowels in the dialect. The oral, let me just this. I want to move this one. Yeah. Wait. No. This is the last part. So, this one. This, I want to put it on another slide. Okay, the vowels are, okay, the 5 vowels, the 5 dialects attest both oral and nasal vowels. Go to this first one. Thank you. Alright, ideally each dialect has 7 oral vowels, and there is a variation in the number of nasal vowels present in the dialect. Yagba and Ora attest 5 nasal vowels, while others attest just 3 nasal vowels. The nasal vowels N and N are only found in Yagba and Ora. Now another thing is that in standardizing Yoruba, which is the mother language, or the standard variety, it has been agreed on that the O and the should be given a singular orthographical representation, the O sound. I'm saying the that you can see there, that the second nasal vowel, and the O, which is not present here, is okay. Let me show us in the next slide. Alright, so alright, thank you. Alright, the O sound and the N sound. So the O and the that's the O there, and the there, that's the mid low and the low, as well agreed to be given a singular orthographical representation. But then in this language, in this dialect, we have instances where a dialect has both the O and the N, so we are forced to go the other way by giving these sounds different orthographical representation. All right, so wow. Okay, just view it. I want to say it. I mean, just go to slideshow. All right. So that's the discussion about the vowels. I don't have much time. At the tone, tone representation is just the conventional way. We have the high, the mid, and the low tones. One thing spectacular about this tonal representation is that in the standard variety and other known dialects, there are no instances where a high tone begins a proper noun. I mean, you cannot have a word, a VCV structure word, with a high tone initial vowel. This dialect has it. Iyagba attests a high tone VCV structure constructions, so, which is against the norm. So what we do is just to retain the high tone conversion, and then the mid tone, and then the low tone. maybe the work will give us more to dive in with time. So that there are, this is an isolated language, the mother language, and so is this dialect. But then we have issues with look at these constructions. Well, when you hear the speakers of the language, the dialect speak, they tend to merge some words together, and then which do not have a concrete meaning in the dialect. Look at High, that's which is supposed to be Hiahibo, ha, that's we that came, something like that. So now, but if you hear it in the first speech, you get the first one. So when we had the first data collection, we transcribed this as hum. But when we had it in a full sentence in the Bible now, the text, we notice that the expression does not have a meaning. The second one is big on. That one is more like carrying it in the speaking sense, but in the orthographical representation, it is big on, that's carrying it for them. Something like that. Now, the third one is the speaker could just say like he's just talking, and this is what we call stuff like that. So there is Aviola nasal there is representing a whole word, which is that's the relative expression that you call something. Now, the last one is Gina. That Gina there, the Aviola nasal there, as I said earlier, is representing another word, which is for a preposition. That's wake, still eat for rods. So these are one of the challenges we faced during this project, in that some words are fused together, which is not typical of an isolating language. Okay, so that's the discussion. So now borrowed words. How do dialects treat borrowed words? Okay, man? It is done by e-insertion, but there are instances where you can put the e before the word just to show emphasis. Now, Killer, that's Clement, Biledi, that's Blade, then John, that's John. Then if I want to emphasize that, okay, this is the John I'm talking about, I will say Ikile, Ibiledi, and John, this is the John I'm talking about. So now we have to keep it like this, even though the language is agglutinative, but we have to describe it this way. Alright, so on the recommendation, this is presented, standard varieties, so we recommend that further works should be done on it. Graphic design is one of the first important steps to take in language preservation. This will have rendered a unified photographies for open dialects. This will facilitate learning and teaching of these dialects in the future. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause. So it's time for questions, comments. Please.
Are you an usher?
Please, my question is, you said that Ogun is not a language, and then you said that those languages, those ones you got down, are dialects. So if they are dialects, which language are they under? And my second question is, okay, sorry, you didn't talk about it, but how does this language adopt English? Like, does it reflect on orthography and the web aspect?
you. Good afternoon. From what you have said, you say you are forced to give sound different representation, which I'm forced to ask, are you using common sense for the work? Or do you apply some principle when you are trying to determine, like for example, trying to determine a phoneme, and you say people are forced to use a particular, is it that you don't apply those principles of, for example, maybe allophone, all those things to determine a phoneme and all of that? So, I want to. Okay.
Well done, my friend. I have a few questions here. First, you said according to Orokoyo, 2007, that the Okun, you have about you have 5 dialects. Sorry, I would like to know which is the standard, and then how is this different from the CY dialect? Yeah, the Central Yoruba dialect. And then how is the orthography like? Because, okay, another thing is that you've said you didn't use any theory for your analysis, and I want to believe that the CY dialect has actually been analyzed using theories. So what is your take on that? And then the last one is, you said that Okun attests high tone, that is the VCB syllable structure. And then I was thinking you're going to give us a kind of acoustic analysis for this, because I know the CY dialect doesn't. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Samuel. Yes, I have a few questions to ask. You talk about verbal insertion when you talk about borrowing, and I saw something like E to break consonant clusters. But you earlier said that you don't use any theory. So I want to know about that one. And also talk about tone constraints, that I vowel don't something come up, and that uncovers the initial position of the word. Then you also show us a sample of borrowed words, but I wanted to hear you tell you was maybe the word they borrowed from. I didn't also hear about that.
My question is, why is it taking so long? You quoted that since 2007, this work is on the go. So what are the reasons that the work is taking so long? Yes, one of the questions I've asked about when you were saying some of the theorems are not correct. Also, you didn't undertake that African languages should have their own theory. But what we know in academic work is a theorem should be a theorem until it is disproved by another authority. So why can't you consult the authorities that are in existence for now, since they have not been yet disproved? And then you were quoting the Yoruba Bible, and since this orthography is taking so long, how can they begin to write the Bible in their language?
All right, thank you, the presenter. I have a few questions. One, why call these speech forms dialects when they can perform communication functions? The second one, what really sets one dialect apart from others? Or are you saying that systematic alternations, which we observe, a strong reason for the speech form to be different dialects? And finally, are these dialects of a dialect or dialects of a language? Thank you.
Yeah, Samuel, I still say thank you for your effort. But then I'm still worried about the mutual intelligibility between the average Yoruba speakers and the Okun dialect speakers. Don't you think that there is a degree of divergence between the standard Yoruba language, standard Yoruba, and this Okun that you're saying? Thank you very much.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. In the course of your presentation, you said that this language is an isolating language. So I'd like you to explain. But when I look at the data that you presented, you used one word to give us a kind of sentence meaning. So what makes it an isolating language? And you did not show us the first thing in any orthographic proposal is the alphabet, letters of the alphabet. I'd like you to present the letters to us in an alphabetical order. Because when I look at your bio charts, when it comes to the ATR vowel, they will not nasalize through. But the minus ATR vowels will be nasalized. Are they really part of the alphabet, or part of the letters of the alphabet, or are they just phonetic?
Sorry. If you say the Okun people, the Okun is a people, not a dialect. The Okun is a people, not a dialect. Then what is the dialect of the Okun people? And how can you create an orthography without the agreement of the people? What is the one left?
Thank you very much, Olaruwaju. Your topic is towards designing an orthography for the Okun dialects. Somebody has already taken an issue with dialects, the word dialects. I personally would have preferred varieties instead of dialects. So you did at the end of the paper, you did not show us any drafts of an orthography the way you think it should be. You didn't see that. So I think the other day, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, one of our students was actually presenting a paper on some of these dialects here. And so I was referring her to Alogoyo's work because I know that she has been working on this dialect. So I'm happy, I hope she's here. Grace, are you here? She's not here. Students were supposed to be here today on a daily basis throughout the duration of this conference. And she's not here to listen to this paper that is related to the work that she's doing. So I'd like to give you time to respond.
Thank you so much for these wonderful comments. I appreciate everything. First, I would like to say this is just, I would say, 1/8 of the whole work. As I said earlier, Mommy said I should have used the term varieties. Yeah. Okay, let me just go to the questions. I had someone that said I didn't do acoustic. The first question was, I forgot. Okay, yeah, he said I shouldn't, I didn't do acoustic analysis, saying that the Central Yoruba has, do not have high initial VCV structure. This is it's a paper ongoing, the tone of Okun dialect. Well, I don't have it here, so I can't present it here. But from the paper, I am doing the research. I noticed that the fundamental frequency, the FO, is high, and then what we found in other height of sounds. Then it talked about forced and as if we forced it. Yeah, we didn't force it. Actually, the slide I have, there's one on my laptop, had some minimal pairs and analogous environment and other stuff that is used to establish phonemic sounds. The borrowed words, which is another issue, the borrowed words, as I said earlier, are adapted into the dialect. And when that is done, there are two things that is done. It is either the vowel E is inserted to break the consonant clusters, or you prefix the vowel E before that, those words to show emphasis. I think I said that in the Clement and the or. Now, there's a question on why the work is taking so long. From 2007 till 2021, okay, and then the issue of theories and the Bible issue. So I will sum it up. In fact, that 2007, I'm still a baby, also, something like that. And the issue is that she needed someone that is a linguist and is well trained and a speaker of those dialects, and I'm fortunate also, so to say, to have lived in those areas. And so the work has been in progress. We have a dictionary of Owe published by Livingston Institute, USA, and it's published already. Now the issue of theories, and I said that because I love theories, but I feel that if you look at the contribution of African languages to linguistic theories, it cannot be overemphasized. The issue of autosegmenta was, as a theory, is from Igbo, right? Igbo was one of the languages used to establish that theory, and then some other stuff. Now, what I'm saying is that using a theory should be on what we have described, and not just jump from description to theoretical application. I am not saying theories are wrong. What I'm saying is that I feel or I believe that we shouldn't be applying theories to our languages without describing those languages before applying theories to them. Now, dialect, what set them apart, and that is it dialect or dialect of the language. Now, as of now, we're trying to get an ISO number for the Okun dialect. And it is politically, in quotes, believed to be a dialect of Yoruba. But Okun is a dialect, or is a group of dialects that is found away from home. I mean, away from the other neighboring language speaking communities, Yoruba language speaking communities. So it is, I would call it Okun dialect because it is a dialect. I mean, it has a mother language, which I said is Yoruba, with communities speaking different dialects, which are the 5 dialects. Average speaker, okay, yeah, is it mutual intelligibility between an average Yoruba speaker and Okun speaker? Well, for some purposes, such as now, before now, the dialects are used to translate in the churches. If you go to your church, in fact, some pastors that couldn't speak the language, we have to use an interpreter for the community. I know Ome, for example, where I grew up. I speak the dialects, yeah. But then you must use an interpreter. In fact, we won't welcome you into our church if you begin to speak English. So if you are speaking to us, you must, in fact, you shouldn't speak Yoruba, you will speak the dialect, because we cannot go and use our own cultures, stuff like that. It's a belief system. Isolating an alphabet, isolating language. Those languages in which words stand for grammatical information. I mean, you have less of band morphemes, and then you have more of words standing alone, free morphemes. Now, in the dialect is in the larger parts of the dialect that we have, at least the one we have at the moment. Another thing could happen tomorrow. It is isolating, but then it has some prefixation, which is just less productive in the dialect. Okay, so now open dialects and people. Now, as I said earlier, open is a popular term for Yoruba part of Kogi State. So now, we adopted the name Open because it is what is known for. It is the acceptable form. So we can't just import our own term from the thing here, from nowhere. Alright, so that's it. Now, Mommy said I didn't show something. Okay, the alphabet, my bad. That's a fault from me. In fact, Doctor must not know. I'm sorry, it's my bad. I have it on my laptop actually, but I didn't show it. So I think I tried to answer some questions in my own little understanding. I want to appreciate Prof for the tutelage, something. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Larewaju. The issue of theories, what I'd like to add there is that for a project like this, you really don't need so much theory. What you need is a description of the sound system of the language, and then it gets to developing the orthography for that language. Well, thank you very much. Let's encourage it. The next person is Paul. The title of the paper is Partnership and Stakeholder Involvement as Enablers in Indigenous Language Documentation and Advocacy. Experience from Akuremi Language Projects. Encouraging. Is Wamaja here? Or somebody representing him? Wamaja, proposal for manual signs in Hausa Sign Language. Not here.
The existing protocols and say, good afternoon, every person. And at the same time, we thank the organizers of this program for approving that the paper we have will be implemented. This paper has been put in place not by myself alone, but by a number of us. Some people have been asking me from which university did you come from? The simple answer is that I did not come from a particular university, but from an organization that is interested in language. From Akuremi Evangelical Outreach, we do Bible translation, so we're interested in language. That is just a simple thing there. So, our topic is partnership and stakeholder involvement as enablers in indigenous language documentation and advocacy. And the experience is from Akuremi Language Projects. We know that what happens is that a number of communities what they do. Those who have been somehow informed, they do one thing or the other to ensure that their language, their culture is preserved. In doing this, there are some fundamental requirements to be sure that whatever is put in place is reliable, is fact, and is okay. And so the specification requires so many things in terms of resources, including financial resources. This puts a burden on getting the language documented. This burden is worse when it has to do with an endangered language like Ekurene. However, in this paper, Grace's theories of communication and meaning have been used to highlight and do a number of things to come up with the documentation. And so at the end of the day, we will end up showing us that partnership and stakeholder involvement are actually enablers in indigenous language documentation and advocacy. The line of presentation is African. See it again. Introduction. The language is classified as Central Delta. The language is spoken in Bayelsa and River State, Nigeria. Concerning vitality, well, the expanded graded intergenerational disruption scale has it as 5 to 6A, which means that the language is stable. The geographical location where the language is spoken, we have made the longitude and latitude for those of us who are interested in geography, and we want to know exactly. Maybe you may wish to go there. The objective that we, by our experience, we are going to highlight the place of partnership and stakeholder involvement in the achievement so far recorded in our language documentation project, and to state the challenges and how we have been able to address them. Statement of the problem. Initial efforts at documenting this language were more or less localized and could not be sustained because of the lack of a central body to handle it and ensure that it is done. Literature represents the culture and tradition of a language or people. And partnership arrangement is such that stakeholders from each sector, they bring in their weakness, their strengths, and so on, into whatever is to be done centrally. So, when people use a language to coordinate a joint task, the weaknesses and so on all come in. And in doing that, the role that each participant plays is defined. So to achieve success, there is need to nurture a working relationship that is based on mutual trust. A mutual relationship that is based on trust, respect, and openness by all parties. All stakeholders are actually expected to buy into the vision of the documentation project. If they do not buy in, if they don't understand, we cannot achieve much. So this paper uses Grice's theory of conversation and meaning, how people communicate when they want to be properly understood by others, to be informative, to be truthful, relevant, and clear. This happens to be the theory that is used to do the documentation. The stakeholders expect the linguistic data to be acceptable by being informative, truthful, and clear. Some scholars attest to the usefulness of this type of framework for doing language documentation. The functional framework was adopted by us, and in linguistics is defined as the approach to language study that is concerned with the functions performed by language, primarily in terms of cognition, expression, and connection. For field work, the community-based model was adopted. In this model, members of the speech community were engaged. Their input collected, analyzed according to the theory that we quoted before, to come up with documentation that is reliable and acceptable. Face-to-face and oral interview. These were the kind of methods that we used. In doing data recording, we did a combination of manual and electronic data. Sometimes we had to do it by phone. A particular case was a situation where we were trying to document, and we reached a place where we had to use the word virgin. And you know that in a number of languages, including our own, it is a sentence. Usually it's a sentence that is used. So, by the time we contacted various persons by phone, the number of them told us what it is. We analyzed it and eventually came up with just a phrase. That was what happened. And the thing became very simplified. The reason being that in doing Bible translation, and especially where we have to use it with Jesus' film, it is time bound. And so we just have to look for a word that is short to be able to occupy the space. The data that we have what we refer to as the primary linguistic data, secondary linguistic data, tertiary and non-linguistic data. We have such data. The project team and partners is made up of 35 persons. From Aboriginal communities, we have 29. From Aboriginal Evangelical Outreach, 2. But that's also part of Aboriginal. Then, from Luke Initiative for Scripture Translation, we have 4 consultants. We have here an example of shareholder representation of language development seminar and town hall meeting, when we made one evangelical outreach to a community called Amoroto. The participants were 227, made of 121 men and 156 women, including teenage children. Out of that, different persons came from different stakeholder communities. As you can see. By way of data analysis and findings, we have a list of internal and external partners and stakeholders available with their roles and responsibilities. We have a project organizational chart that illustrates the interface and management processes, including the roles played by various partners. We started this work in 2017. That was when we started it. By that time, there existed literacy materials were in various formats that were primarily intended to make people know how to read and write, including some tape-recorded material. There is evidence of collaboration among internal and external partners and stakeholders, especially by native speakers representing their speech communities and dialects. No community is left out of the people who speak this language. All the communities are involved. This happens to be a material on reading and writing in the Aboriginal language that we used sometime to teach how to read and write. Here is a measurement, monitoring and reporting of the involvement performance. How do the various stakeholders perform? What is their performance? Starting from 2017 to 2021, we find them there and the number of representatives and also their presence. Here we have a histogram of the man days expended for documentation and learning. Here is total man days per participating community or organization. This is the histogram. When you look at it, you find that Aboriginal Evangelical Outreach and List Initiative for Scripture Translation happens to be highest. Actually, they are the main drivers of the project. Here, on this figure, we are looking at, in terms of age of the people involved, what are their ages? Will the project be sustainable or not? Looking at it, we find that of those 60 and above, that makes up 28.6%, and 40 to 59 makes up 54.34%. Then the younger ones, the younger generation make up only 17.14%. So the question is that with this kind of situation, if we leave it as it is, okay, can we really continue and succeed? Here we have another chart showing the various professionals that are involved. If we look at this chart, we find that engineering professionals, they are more, they are 11. Then clergy, they are 8. Then when we go to linguists, we only have 2. However, one of them is late. We do what is called feedback management. As we do this work, we document it, we send it out. People read what we have done. And as they read, they give us feedback. When they give us such feedback, we value the feedback a lot. We record it and give them a good reply and thank them very well so that they can continue. In one of the feedbacks, somebody was trying to blame the president of the organization, that how come that you did not include your complete, you have mentioned the names of so many communities in a particular team. Why did you not include your community? Well, that is to show the fact that the people doing work will not insist on any of the dialects, but we just analyze and take that which we consider best. And so the reply to that was that in the next edition, it will be included. What are our problems and challenges? This project relies mainly on voluntary donors and voluntary participants. We do not have people that we are paying. So if they no longer come, we are out. There is a general clamor by dialect groups to ensure that their linguistic aspects are included. Like we have different dialects. Some people want their dialect to be the one that will feature, but we manage that and move ahead. A number of members in the project are aging. That's one of our challenges. Lack of indigenous native speaking linguists in the project. We don't have them. As you can see, we have only 1. Then we have low involvement of some of the remote communities who speak the language. Their involvement is low. In view of this, we wish to recommend the following. seek opportunities for a sustainable means of funding to complement the current resource base that relies on interested donors only. Mutually address any concerns that are raised by any speech community. We identify and train potential project team members with the right competencies and experience so that they can fill in the gap. We are to search for undergraduates and postgraduate students of linguistics and encourage them to become part of this project. We are to increase the rate of literacy awareness in the community, especially the remote ones, so that they can participate better in the project. So, we conclude that from the data analysis and interface management processes in place, we are of the view that if you want to succeed in language documentation, that you actually need to have internal and external stakeholders' participation and involvement. The role of a central body in organizing the language documentation is very important. If not, we will not do much. Okay. So, we may have questions and answers. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause for Mr. We'll take comments, questions. Yes.
I have a question. In the aspect of main finance of the project. Now, aside the opportunity to say they are seeking donations outside, okay, what are the available internal revenues you guys are doing to generate revenues for the projects? One, and secondly, I'm looking at this because for one to partner in a particular, there should be incentive that partners or stakeholders should, okay, we need this, we can gain this from partnering with you people. So what are those? Do you guys have incentives that if our partners come or our stakeholders, this is what they will gain from partnering with you people? Because most times, as if for language partnership, there's no gain for partners and stakeholders. But if you go to the entertainment industry, as if that's why you see most stakeholders in the entertainment industry. Because when they partner with people, okay, they will stand to gain this. So I think there should be something incentive that people, when they partner, they can get something.
Thank you. Please, sir, I was excited yesterday when I saw from the book, one of the books, in fact, the two books that a friend bought in connection with the project that you are an engineer. And I was excited because it now was clear to me that since language is a social inheritance, that it calls for greater participation. It is not an exclusive reserve of good linguists. So, there you told us that you have only one professional. So I still see, whereas I encourage collaboration, there are still things that you should have more hands, professional hands. Then number two, very important, you've not told us whether you are really talking about a language or dialect or a variety, as Proverbs said. Because what I know about your area is that whereas in the central Niger Delta, the Jaw constitute the majority, the Aboa Odua group share the same history of origin migration with the people of Akwa Ibom and Cross River. In fact, if you go to Calabar, you see a large section known as Aboa. That's where they migrated from. So I don't know whether it is a variety of the Jaw language or whether it is a variety of Aboa Odua. They did not miss out the historical component, because what I've noticed in interpretation is that because of the limitation in methodology and perspective, you see people commit the error of giving a language garment to a dialect or variety. So can you please tell us where that language, originates from, whether from the Jaw or the Aboa, then why the Aboa Odua, please?
I'm sure you're the author of those books that were displayed yesterday. Okay, the author is here. All right. You've not published any of those books? Okay, you did not write any of those books. All right. I've seen the efforts that you've made, but the problem we always have is on the spelling rules. Spelling rules. Because the engineers, the engineers will write based on their experience. And please, it's one of the appeal. When you have the linguists, they'll come in and they'll give you the proper guide concerning the spelling rules of that language. If such a thing happens, kindly respect the opinion. Reason: if you start teaching the language and the student use the wrong spelling rules, it will affect them. It will affect literacy, because literacy is the ability to speak and write. Then writing the correct spelling rule is a problem. The engineers may not be able to get the correct spelling rules. What I mean by correct spelling rules is number of letters and how to combine these letters in the appropriate way.
Okay. Let me start from the last one. Concerning the issue, the author of the books consulted linguists. He worked with linguists before producing those books. That was what he did. And the linguist gave him adequate guidance in doing the work. Then the other aspect, again, the issue of having only one linguist. We're saying that as native speakers, we have only one linguist who is a native speaker working with us. But we have 4 consultants from Luke Initiative for Scripture Translation. Those 4 consultants, 2 of them at least are linguists, and so they guide us and help us in the work we do. What is the origin of the language? Well, The issue is that this language is a language. I know that during the Civil War, they classified all of us and said we are Ijaw. Okay. But there is a particular language that is spoken by Izon, which is called Izon. This one is completely different. Those who speak Izon not understand Agboreni, and those who speak Agboreni not understand Izon. So it's a completely different language. As to where it came from, maybe we shall have to do some more research to know if it came from where it came from. Okay, that also has to do with the historical component. The issue of finance. So far, we have been having finance from voluntary donors, people who see the need for us to document the language, people who see the need for us to do the Bible translation. Really, this project is not so much of a commercial project. It's not so much of a commercial project, but it's more or less has been taken over by the evangelical, outreach as one of the means by which the gospel will be spread to indigenous people. If the Bible is translated in the language and they can read and write, they will understand it better. So it's not so much of a commercial venture. However, we could, as the days go by, begin to think if there is any way that we can provide some incentives so that more people want to come and partner with us. K. Williamson, please, I'm not the editor of the book. Now, answer that.
Yes, K. Williamson, yes, he has the slide. K. Williamson, yes. K. Williamson clarified it under the Cross River, this is a So you're right, So we are aligned. Thank you very much for that one.
So I hope I've not left out the answer to any questions.
Proposal of manual signs in Hausa Sign Language. Is it here? Okay. You see for language books. Language books, are they here? Okay. Take last but not the least, this section. Usifo and Jeffrey, are they here? No. So we'll take the last, but not the least, in this session, the Lower Cross Languages Project by Professor Imelda Cheji Udo. A round of applause to encourage her. Very distinguished guests. We are sorry for the little delay in starting. We are trying to set up. I thought I had someone before me, so we are not quite ready. But it's ready. Just give us a few more seconds. The Lower Cross Languages Project. You know that the theme of this meeting is on projects. We're trying to track what kind of projects we have on our languages. Not only are we trying to track them, we want to also give ideas to other people who may be interested in doing this kind of things in their own languages or in the areas where they are. I want to thank the last speaker for that project. These are the kind of things we are looking for. I say congratulations to the Agoreni team. God will help you. So, the Lower Cross Languages is a departmental project. I like to say that you can have individual projects, you can have group projects, you can have corporate projects, you can have departmental projects. This one is one of our many projects in the Department of Linguistics and Nigerian Languages. Now, you know what the Lower Cross is? It's a group of languages under the Cross River. So, many of them are the languages spoken in Akwa Ibom. I'll talk about that briefly. But let us look at the outline for this talk. So, we are going to look at the background to the Lower Cross Languages project, and then we will look at the project itself, and then we will look at the background, a brief background on Nigerian languages, and then the Lower Cross languages, and then the project overview, and a few acknowledgements. So the project, as I said, is a project of the Department of Linguistics and Nigerian Languages of the University of Uyo, and it started a long time ago, sometime around the 90s, when the department took a decision to work on the languages in this area as a department. And so, as I said earlier, these languages are those spoken in Akwa Ibom State. And so every year, the department chooses a language to work on. Yesterday, you heard the Commissioner for Information and Strategy. He referred to that, the field trip that they made in his time. That's what we are talking about. So when we choose a department, a language, usually, that language is the focus in the research methodology course that is taken in the third year. We have two programs, BA Linguistics and BA Fikibitium. So both programs do that course, and they form the focus for this work. And in addition to that, the postgraduate students also join. Then other colleagues who are interested, we try to get interested. And so, sometimes even foreign partners that we have at the time who visit also join us on those field trips. Many years ago, Professor Uwa was leader of a certain collaboration that gave us many fruits. We called it the Abroad Project. There's another mini project inside the project of the department. We have several, as I said. And this one was a language documentation project involving 3 universities. Our university, University of Bielefeld, and the University of Cocody in Abidjan. So there was that tripartite collaboration. It was all part of it. And I'm proud to say that it was that project spearheaded by Professor Udo. Professor Udo, that gave us an MA project in language documentation. Initially, it was called computational language documentation. That is MA in computational language documentation. But then a few years later, I think 10 years later, the project, that same project, benefited from the funding to review the curriculum of the program. And I think that was another collaboration between our department, SOAS, Department of Linguistics in SOAS London, and the Adekunle Adjacent University at Akumba. Another tripartite project. So in that project, the curriculum of the other one was reviewed, and the name changed from MA Computational Language Documentation to MA
language documentation and description. And I think that UNILO is still the only one offering postgraduates in language documentation at this time. Am I wrong? I'm correct. It was a clap. Not only are we offering an MA program in language documentation, we are also offering a PhD program in language documentation and speech technology. Clap properly for us, please. Thank you. So that's what we are saying, that from one project we did on to the other, and so on and so forth, and we involve many more people. So that is like background. And so the Lower Cross, that's supposed to be Lower Cross Languages Project, that it documents, as I said, the languages in the Lower Cross area is in Akwa Ibom. And usually this documentation begins with the traditional description, as we have said. And then some of the documentation items that have come out were put in an archive. I don't know, it's not an active archive, but they were stored in an archive at some time. I believe that they are still there. I think Professor will give us a little more information on that later on. Yes, maybe during the response. And besides that, besides that archive, we have been working on these languages. So, just a minute. Yes, so about Nigeria, the information has already been given, and I'm sure we've heard it before, that we're talking about over 500 languages, according to Ethnologue, maybe 508 or thereabouts. And many of these languages are in the four language families: Niger, Congo, Afro, Isiati, and Nilo, Sahara. That's the three. And then, out of these languages, 28 of them have been listed in UNESCO Atlas of Endangered Languages as being endangered. This does not really necessarily reflect the current picture, because we know that a lot of work which needs to be done has not been done. We are still working, and because the information is not getting to the UNESCO, perhaps this figure is what it is now, maybe more, maybe less. And so this calls for more work. We do have some major challenges in documenting these languages. And that, as you know, has been said earlier, is funding and personnel. And we are working on part of that. So now the Lower Cross languages. They include Ibibio, Anan, Oro, Eke, Mbo, Kobo, Gari, Enwa, Iko, Tungonuso, Goro, Ilue, Uda, Ebu, Itebi, Ibno, Salade. I may have missed a few of them, but there are as many as that. And only Ilue is listed on the endangeredlanguages.com. I've not checked recently whether it is still the only one, or that is the information we had a while ago. Others are not listed because, as we said earlier on, sometimes it is obsolete data that is used, and we need to do more work. We know that many of these languages are endangered, and much of the languages associated with traditional knowledge is fast being eroded. Like languages related to deities, for instance. Again, my colleague Professor has worked on that. Those ones, like she said, are undergoing instrumental deaths because even though they are not being used, often, they are gradually getting not just endangered, but not being used at all. They are dying out. But some aspects of the language may still be alive. So you're thinking that the language is alive, but many aspects of that language are dying. And so we know that some of these lower cross languages have word lists. But in the department from these projects, we have scores of BA projects, MA projects, word lists, and so on, just in that area of description. So here is the project overview. So, if we group the languages into 4, we find out that Ibibio is in a class of its own. And so far, here is what has been done. It has been fairly developed. And it has grammars. It has an approved orthography since 1983, I think. It's got primers. It's examined up to SS. I think recently that is the situation. It stopped at JSS a while ago, but now it's up to SS. It has a literary tradition. It has an electronic dictionary and a print dictionary, which I have yet to include here. It has a speech synthesizer, which I believe has gone far. And then the archive I talked about earlier on. Then in the group B, you have 3 languages, the Anan, Oro, and Ikeko. And these languages, Anan has an approved orthography. The Oro has a proposed orthography which it is processing. And I think Eke is also working on an orthography. Beyond that, the rest of the languages, perhaps because Obolo is also spoken in Rivers area, I believe, where it is the catchment. A lot of work has been done on it. So they may be benefiting from some of the work done from the Rivers end. So Iko, Nkari, Iwere, Tumboluso, Lue, Nwa, Uda, around the Igbo area, don't have much except maybe student projects and some preliminary descriptions. Then in the group D, we have Debbie, Igno, Iworo, Ebu, Fiat, Ukwa, and Osagade. To the best of our knowledge, these ones have not been studied at all. So that's like a rough preview of what has happened in the Lower Cross Languages project. So, as I said earlier on, within this project, there are other projects. We were at some point trying to work on grammar project for Anan and a meta language for Ibibio, and so on and so forth. But somebody has raised the issue of funding, so we got stuck at some point, and then we'll go back to it. Is that those are our ideas, and we would like to continue and bring them to fruition. Let me give some acknowledgements. I would like to thank the University of New York, University of Bielefeld, University of Cocody, School of Oriental and Asian Studies, Asian or African Studies, and then the Akwa Ibom state governments. And these are not all, of course, but these are the major supporters and funders of the work we've done over the years, and we appreciate what we are doing. And like Oliver Tuesday, we are asking for more to finish the project. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Please, a better round of applause. Comments, questions, inputs? Yes.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to know about the project actually. I want to talk about the archiving. I don't know whether you considered having your own data files from the either Oxford or something. They have an open database that you can register on and put your project there for maybe public assessment or something like that. I'm not sure whether you have considered doing that too. Thank you.
think my question is the scope of the project, the LCLP project. See, the scope, is it not too narrow, looking at just formal linguistics only, core linguistics, because I'm hearing grammar, the orthography, is that the scope? Or can we also look at working with other disciplines? For example, let's say language now with ecology, trying to find solution like, because I'm looking at just applying this rather than just call this thing formal linguistics.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for the presentation. Please, ma'am, one of the things that gets me interested is the issue of political influence when it comes to language documentation. Political influence. Because most times the problem, or the major, I think, the major problem we have with documenting language is funding, as we've mentioned here. And most of them tend to be looking into the political circle to get funding from this. At least I've undertaken one or two and such. And what I notice is, since we are funding and giving you money for this, okay, this is what we think should be in the language, maybe because they're trying to favor a particular circle. How, as language and people, be able to manage this? Because I think personally that this is an issue in the documentation process for language. Thank you. Please, I'd like to note that I would like to have the paper, please, Prof, later. But tentatively, I disagree with their classification from my point of view as a historian. And I want to note that the major challenge that is facing, the linguistic studies in this part of the country is the issue of methodology, approach. I think the department should plan to adopt a multidisciplinary approach in future. Because tentatively here, even when you read Professor Oyan's submission, you see that he himself said that Ebo came from Ubolo. And even here, I have seen that Yabolo and Iku, you classify them as distinct languages. And I want to know that Ekebi in Oron consists of Aparapo, a large chunk of Aparapo, and which other group? Two groups. And here, I have seen that in their group D is Ekebi, which you have in Eket, but you brought Ekebi, to classify with Ibn and all that. So please, I would like to see that paper to do a critique of it, please. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Prof, for the presentation and the work so far done. I came across a student from Lagos, and she asked me if there was any orthography. So she said there wasn't any orthography in Lagos. And I said, I know of Prof. Melda that she must have done something there. So I'm using this opportunity to really know if my answer to her was correct.
Any other comments, questions, Miriam?
Thank you, Professor, for this interesting introduction to the project here. I would like to know what tools in terms of softwares that you are using, and also you already spoke about archiving. And is it only published hard copies, or is it available also as soft copies? Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Let me attempt to react to some of the comments and questions. We considered our own data bank. Yes, of course, we considered our own data bank. we do have issues of too much work at a time, lack of funding, many things like that. So now, the archive that I mentioned earlier on is the one that was developed when we had some foreign partners. I'd like Professor Ura to talk a little about it. As a department, we have not done anything on our own, but we are in collaboration with the Department of Computer Science that helps us out on the technical aspects of the documentation when we need it. So I can't tell you that we have any other data bank. Of course, it is the ideal thing to do. We are working on it, but that part of the project has not materialized yet, so we are still on it. So, Professor, do you want to say something about that? Fine. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Professor Odo for the summary that she has provided on the work that the Department of Linguistics and Nigerian Languages has been involved with over the years. I want to say that what she has done is important because this is like a historical documentation so that we don't forget, some of these things you can forget over time if they are not put down, they are not documented. So with respect to the archive, some of the work that they have done has been funded by foreign partners. And so much of the data there is archived in these foreign archives. For example, we have much of the work that was funded by the Volkswagen Foundation is archived at the University of Bielefeld in Germany. And then some of the work has also been archived with ELDP, the Endangered Languages Documentation Project at SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies. And if you have read some of these things that I've done, I've always advocated that we should have our own national archives, where we document the things that we have done. We had a very bad experience in 2012. We had funding, we had partnership to work with colleagues in the US, University of Kansas to be specific. And we did a lot of, we spent 6 weeks eliciting data from one of the languages spoken in Igbo in Akwa Ibom State. And we actually took 2 consultants from that community to that project. And at the end, we had nothing to show for all that work, all that stress, all that time. So I do not subscribe to just dumping things in foreign archives. We should have our own national archives. And we were working with Dr. Moses Ekpenyong in computer science so we can see if we can find funding to have our own archives in place. Because it can be, all that work on, the language, everything, the culture, the language, the grammar, everything. In fact, she worked on the aspect of the orthography for that, the draft orthography for that language. And it is sad we have been, struggling. They said they will send it, they will do that. 2012 is a long time. It's over 8, this is the 9th year. And nothing out of that. So I'm not a believer. I think there's still a lot of neo-colonialism, even in academic work. So we have to look out for ourselves and develop our own. Even for the funding of research, we need to fund our own research as a national. So I'm happy with what TED Fund is beginning to do now. Funding research projects. Because at the end of the day, if a foreigner funds your project, they will dictate exactly how you should fund it, and what they want to do with the data at the end of the day. So that's what I'd like to say. Thank you very much.
So there is also a comment on the scope of our work being too narrow. Well, the work is in progress. Of course, we begin with the linguistic parts and then collaborate with those. Let me link that up to Dr. Akpan's comment. Collaborate with people around you, but you have to do proposals. Yes, I'm going to talk about that. That we've started the collaboration for the beginning with computer science, which is why I said we have something on speech synthesis. It is not the linguist that did that. So right now we have a full-blown collaboration with computer science of this department of this university. And of course, we are open to work with history. I'm very happy to say that Dr. Akpan started doing linguistic things with us coming from history, and I'm very proud of his article, the article he wrote on language documentation. Please give him a big round of applause. So now that he's with us, I'm happy we see that you're ready for that collaboration, we're ready to work with you. Let me quickly also move to the point you raised about the languages and the classifications. You know, these are linguistic things, the socio-linguistic, and the wish of the people is very, very important in these classifications beyond the linguistic parts. So whenever these classifications are done, that is considered. So if the Ikebi people say they are Ikebi, they don't belong to, is it a Ket or which other group? You don't have the right to say that they belong there. Which this is what informs some of the classifications that you see. We know the linguistic facts, but the sociolinguistic and ethnographic information is also important. The wish of the people is usually considered as well. Those are the things that are considered, which is why these languages are grouped the way they are until they change. So those are the classifications we are working with right now. We know the relationships. The other comment was regarding political interests. Yes, of course, who dictates who pays the piper dictates the tune. And we are trying to manage the output as best as we can, diplomatically. So you have to find a way of advocacy to convince or confuse your funders to see reason why it should be so. It's not somebody else that will do it for you. So as you get the funding, you must have written a proposal to get that funding, that support. So you have to find a way to convince them to see your reason. If not, you have to do something that will be acceptable to the person that is funding. And then there is also the methodology. Someone said it is not, okay, that's the one, multiple, yes, of course, we are open to that. You've heard that. We've had a long-standing collaboration with computer science. You can imagine that our first PhD candidate came from computer science, that is Dr. Moses. Many of you here don't know that Dr. Moses Epenyon has a PhD in linguistics. Do you know that? But she came from computer science. So we have that collaboration and we're ready to work with history and other departments. Then the tools, in terms of softwares. Yeah, of course, there are the normal tools. We use Elan, we use Pratt, we use Flex. We say, in fact, where to start because it's quite simple. We used to use Lexipro as well. Those are the tools, the free tools from SIL. We use them, and that's where we are. We've not developed our own tools. We are hoping that we will. Sometime we'll develop our own tools. Then, the issue of labor, okay, now that's my first language, labor. Unfortunately, it is an upper course language, it's not a lower course. We don't have an approved orthography, but I have personally developed an orthography, not for the whole language, but for using data from one dialect, which I'm trying to expand to involve other legs in the language, other 4 legs. So I've been looking for people to work with. I think the distance hasn't helped me. So you can refer the person to me so that we can talk about it. I do have a proposed orthography, but of only 1 leg, and that is not good enough. So we have a long way to go. But there is something on ground. So I think that's about it.
Thank you very much. Please, let's give her a better round of applause. Thank you very much for your patience. Yes, we are taking an extra hour beyond when this should have ended. But that was because we couldn't start on time because there was no power, no electricity as at where we should have started. But I want to thank you very much for staying with us throughout this session. This is lunch time. We believe that you enjoy your lunch. There's a lot of food in Akwa Ibom State, wide variety, delicious and healthy. So go out there and enjoy your lunch. But remember to come back, don't go back and sleep. Come back so that we can continue. Please try to come back at 2:30. We don't intend to rush you, but because of time constraints. So bon appetit.
Igbo people dialect is full of taboos. Taboos expressions which make the Igbo society quite different from every other ethnic group in Nigeria. Taboos, of course, have been in existence since for more until 1777 it was discovered by or made mention of the find by Captain George Cobb. Then let's do it for categories of taboo in Igbo land. Categories of taboo. There are too many to mention, but for the sake of space and time, look at the Conqueror's 2011 war. There is spell some taboos as a guardian of the Naka. So that particular is a key to uphold the right. Otherwise, calamity will not just that.
I use conversational analysis theory and all you research. So I want to use that to understand the nature of interaction. Interruption or phases of interaction. So I use that and try to understand how they were interacting, what kind of interaction they were in check. Then all communities are said to the effect factors and people are products outside the community and Ghana. Although it's still a major minority, then it's a more vulnerable product. How was the problem like like I've said, some people say, if you listen to the jingles, you can listen to the radio, on the social media, but this is that don't know, a lot of people don't know smartphones. How do they be able to understand the information and other things like that? So if the community members understand the different government passports, it is one thing to listen to something, it's another thing for you to understand what is the difference between passport. So I don't understand that let's go to the dimension. I actually was a participant observation, in that I attended 6 services in the community, and also visited 6 different markets in the area. The area I'm talking about covers the Urakomo people, the Oro people in Okobo, and as well as Oro in town. So, given the family, this picture, what we are going to see, we are actually taking between April and May. This is one of the markets. You can see, in fact, I went inside the market. It was only 3 people I saw with face mask. Such a bad market. But look at this information of people I see. I don't know whether there was any face mask amongst them. There was none. And yet, the pandemic was nobody could see. And the purpose of this, why in Uyo we were not allowed to even go to the market. There were no stores. Those places are far from my medical facilities, the rest of the places were shut down. But why was it also done in the villages? I don't understand. So here in the city or the town, we observe all those things. In the villages, nobody wanted to tell them, look, don't do this, don't do that. They carry on as usual, business as usual. So here you see the photograph. These are the beggars market. This is actually a video. I actually remember that gentleman asked me, why are you in the market? What are you doing? And he said, he said, want to start this? And I said, so, are you aware of this? Then he had said something like that. And I said, so what is going on? I said, don't mind them, the police that are trying to stop us from our business. The police say we should not carry more than 2 persons. Because in that area, they carry like 4 people on one motorcycle. Even during the pandemic, and they were going like that, with 4 people on the same side, and I was worried about it. So when I told the young man, I could see it clearly. He said, yes, but I think it's about people come to the area of our that. Why would I say that? Because the rain that fell yesterday actually blew away the storm that came, blew away the COVID-19 from all kinds of people. It actually made me worry. So, this is one of the things that I got. Because when I said from church, yes, that week I said, Pastor, the pastor was going to come to the pastor was praying for God. I think the movie that was going to the pastor was having a lot of shout the people hallelujah. I'm not afraid. This is conversation. Shout the people hallelujah. You are on the top of the people that hallelujah. No sickness or disease shall come upon my life, and the congregation repeated after I prophesied to yourself that you cannot die. Who is that was nice? Prophesy to yourself that you cannot die. Who prophesy to yourself? After at the end of the day, is there nothing like telling these people that you can sit as if at least space yourself in the church? He said, no, because we have declared that the disease of the future, which is COVID-19, cannot come inside the church. Then this other data I took for the market, I'm not going to show all the 6 places, but then this is the market I said, and I said, I don't know myself. And I said, look, that is, I saw you playing with young ladies and so on. And I said, yes, also. So I've seen you playing with young ladies. Say, each one was so yes, it was good. I've been saying, come over to the I'm going to go on the books and I'm going to go. I'm not going to talk about it. You said, you get to know somebody. You said, and I said, are you not alone? Today, when you talk about everything, you can go all over. Something I've got the one. I said, yes, I said, in discussion, that what I'm saying, you get along. Something like this. You didn't get down to it. Because the politics are giving to politicians who actually politicize the and then they say, you want to fix up the this is very important. This is important.